want to acknowledge the Lenai Lenape, and that they're the first people that lived here, and that it's important to honor them. So tonight we're going to have Meg Lemire and Bree Brighton, and then Elise Gerhardt speaking, and then we're going to have Mara, and
from Virginia.
Yeah, Virginia.
The Appalachian Mountains,
Yes.
1,000 flags, 1,000 waters. And this waterways is what Elise and Bree and Meg are going to be speaking of. It's a collaboratively drawn piece, which I think is amazing, and I can't wait to hear more about it.
So today, Meg and I are going to talk a little bit about our process, how and why we came to make this image, and then we're going to get into the content of it. And then we're going to pass the mic along to Elise, who's going to add
Context to this.
Context. Yeah, context. Process, content, context. And if at any point you'll have questions, feel free to ask them.
Great. Well, Bree and I met in late 2016 when the Dakota Access Pipeline was being proposed to be built, and there was a lot of resistance against that. And the first collaboration that we did was to put together a postcard set of art about protecting water, and fundraise by selling that and then sending the money up to support that project up there. And we did that partially because that was super important to do. Also, we wanted to figure out if we got along and worked together well, because we had never met, but we were told that we should meet and work together for like years. And we were like, oh yeah, this is like kind of perfect. And so we decided to launch this project, which we thought could get done in 1 month.
The idea was we'll make a poster every month.
Yeah, a different poster every month.
And
that was a complete failure.
well, we just actually.
Speak up.
Yeah,
See,
sure.
We're standing right here and they want to hear you.
Sure.
Thank you.
I wouldn't call it a failure. What we actually learned was how much time and energy goes into telling the stories of people.
In a really genuine way.
Because this poster came out of a call from organizers throughout the Pennsylvania region who were wanting some sort of graphic representation of their story. Elise included, I believe, in that. Well, you're definitely you were one of the many people that we talked to, because the main part of this process was hearing people's stories. Everyone who you see in this poster represents someone in this region who is affected by the fracking industry.
And mostly in this region, we focused on Pennsylvania, although obviously fracking and the infrastructure that is caused by fracking is so many other places. But we kind of focused on Pennsylvania because we had the most contacts there, and that's where people were talking to us about possibly making educational material for it.
Meg had been doing anti-fracking work for years leading up to it, and I had been doing food justice work in and around Philly. So we were using a lot of the connections that Meg had made over the last several years.
So I guess the process of making it, well, should we talk about what fracking is first?
Does anyone not know what we mean when we say fracking. It's totally fine if you don't.
I would love to hear, I mean, I know what it is, but I would love to hear you explain it briefly from your
Yeah.
perspective.
Great.
You don't have to, but
Yeah.
I'm just really curious, like.
Oh, wait, one more.
Well, the reason I'm standing up is to get out of the way because this is the star of the show. Would you like to go ahead?
Sure, yeah. Hydraulic fracturing, also known as fracking, is a extreme form of fossil fuel extraction in which a well is drilled into the ground many feet deep, up to 10 Empire State Buildings stacked on top of each other. Imagine that, and then sink that into the ground. It goes through our topsoil, our bedrock, our water, our aquifers, down to the Marcellus Shale. And the shale is this flaky, sedimentary rock. And within the Marcellus Shale, which runs through Pennsylvania and into New York and into Ohio and Virginia, trapped inside the shale is natural gas, which is a fossil fuel. It is made from the dead bodies of countless trillions of phyto and zooplankton who died hundreds of millions of years ago.
564.
All of them, to be precise.
At the same time.
The drill is drilled, and then it makes a 90-degree turn and continues on for many thousands of feet, up to 2 miles. And into that drill is very forcefully injected a slurry of sand and water and patented protected chemicals. And when I say water, I'm just talking about like millions of gallons of water, fresh water, mixed with sand and chemicals, shot in to this Marcellus Shale. This fractures, hence the word fracturing, fractures the shale. The sand props up the new fissures that were made, and those fissures then allow for this natural gas to escape up the drill well and into containment ponds. So that is essentially like the extractive process of fracking. From there, it gets exported, it gets transported via pipe and train and truck to processing plants, cracker plants, and it is exported and used by all of us, whether, in some cases, whether we like it or not. And it's super dangerous and destructive and unsustainable, and yet it is sold as the new green energy that will save our economy and our environment.
I think that we're going to talk about process after that. And
Yeah.
then go into a couple stories.
Yeah.
I'm also going to keep our time checked. So this is happening in Pennsylvania, right? And so Bree and I decided to start trying to figure out how to document this information, synthesize it into visual metaphors, and then figure out how to draw tons and tons of different stories into one large graphic. And somebody asked me the other day why one large graphic that is so complicated that it's kind of dizzying to look at, instead of writing like a comic book or just writing a book or just like a series of images or something like that. And for me personally, it's because if you write a book, you read it and then it goes on the shelf and you don't think about it. Well, maybe you do. I think about books all the time. But you possibly don't think about it for a really long time after that. And what we wanna do is keep it in people's faces and keep people thinking about it, and having an image on the wall is something that people will keep looking at, keep immersing themselves in, keep learning about, and it'll stay prevalent. And engaging on it on different levels, like if people color it in, or if they like tell their friends about it, or each one of our paper posters comes with an 8-page booklet that tells the whole story, like vignette by vignette. So it's constantly moving, constantly teaching you something new. Well, you guys are pretty in it, so I don't know if it's teaching you much, but it's giving you tools if you want them to share it with somebody else. And sometimes it's helpful to have it all together, because it seems really fractured sometimes when it's like, this story happened here, this story happened here, but it fits into this big picture this way.
One of the other reasons why I liked this process was it offers a story in a non-linear way. So if you are reading an article or watching a documentary, you are being led through a story that has like a beginning, a middle, and end, and you are following a point of view, and that point of view may shift, but it's kind of only one point of view at once. And I like this because it shows how complicated and how interconnected all of these stories are, and you can kind of take them in a less linear way, and then like delve in kind of as feels right to you.
So when Bree and I were working on this, we ended up working on this project for 9 months instead of just 1 month. We spent 6 of those months just interviewing people. We didn't put one pen to paper through, well, just with notes throughout that whole time. We did take notes, I swear. And so we just took in information for like so long. 6 months of listening to people is a really, really long time. And so then taking that information and synthesizing it and trying to figure out, okay, what are the themes we have going here? What are the like groupings or quote unquote chapters we could create here, was something that we wanted to translate into the image so that people had, you know, some sort of organization that they could follow throughout looking at the piece.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I go through, please?
Yeah.
So over here we have infrastructure and kind of like how fracking is done, right? We have the infrastructure leading kind of over into here with some of the infrastructure, which I already said like 3 times, over here, and out through the INEOS ships that are being shipped all over the world. Yes, and so we have infrastructure, then we have this whole section from FERC. What does that stand for?
Federal Energy Regulatory Commission.
Say it again?
Can you repeat? The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission.
There we go. We also have the Department of Environmental Protection.
Is that a rubber stamp?
There is. And it's just
Usually.
stamping this whole pile of permits for these different infrastructure projects. We have the Department of Environmental Protection with their many filing cabinets full of complaints that have never seen the light of day that Public Herald, an investigative journalist group in Pittsburgh, have unearthed. We then have some more policy happening up here. We have industry lobbyists and the politicians who get fed their money. Up here we have, yes, Mr. Big Bag Tom Wolf.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's at a town hall meeting or some sort of meeting with a bunch of folks who are trying to give him a petition. And over here we have, right behind them is the whole scene of resistance, which I have a feeling somebody's gonna talk about in a minute. Above that, we have the riparian waterway. Does anybody know, well, what does riparian mean? Anyone?
By the river.
Yeah.
Forest by the river.
it's any habitat or ecosystem that exists alongside a body of water.
That's right. And it's beautiful and it's perfect. And then it starts getting interacted with humans and whoa, got some pollution happening. And then going past the refinery, we get into big trouble, and then it gets dumped right out into the ocean. But this whole area over here, does anybody recognize this shape?
New Jersey.
That's right. And these are all the waterways tucked into New Jersey. New Jersey is like a sponge of waterways. It's amazing.
One of the reasons why we spent a lot of time on that area was less, not so much to say that this is the story of New Jersey, but to offer a geographic marker to where we are without using state or border lines. One of our earliest drafts had Pennsylvania kind of like marked out, and then someone we were talking to was like, you really want to use like colonial markers to show where we are? And we were like, no, we don't. That's why we're talking to so many people. Yeah. Sorry, Meg, go ahead.
No, yeah. And right above New Jersey is this tickle of mess coming into this whole region of our contextual, civilized way of living, with railroad tracks, transportation, we have pipelines, we have bank logos hidden all over. Oh, just kidding, we're really good banks, but they're funding all of this. We have chains with shackles on them talking about property not only of humans, but of creatures and the earth and the water. And we have one little badass bobcat who's like, I'm gonna tear this down. And so he's tangled up in there. And we have this little, what is it?
What is it?
Dinosaur.
No.
It's kind of like a dinosaur.
It's a hellbender! Yes!
What?
It's a hellbender.
It's a hellbender salamander, which is the oldest salamander ever.
Isn't that our new state park
Yeah.
or something like that?
We have hellbender
A
autonomous.
state amphibian?
Yeah.
Okay, well that was very in my day. But anyway, so the hellbender it can be like 80 years old. It's an amazing creature, you should look it up. They're huge. Anyway, it's taking down the system. It's representing some folks who shut down a pipeline by breaking into the valve turning station and just shutting it all down. Looks like y'all know about that. Above here, we have a whole section talking about our hopes and dreams and visions for the future. And the reason why we included that is because at the end of all of our interviews, we asked people like, wow, we just talked about some heavy stuff. Like, if we won, what would it look like to you? And we heard so many amazing stories. We had so many amazing examples that are not just hopes, they're really things that are happening. And we wanted to represent that and give that a lot of real estate in this whole image, because that's super important to envision and live in that better world. And Bree's gonna talk about that a little bit more in the future, or right now.
Up here in this corner, for like what we are defending and what we're building, you'll see this strange crew of people. You have this opossum and the little opossum kits, and they are kind of like taking apart this computer tower and they're rewiring it. And next to them is dandelion and burdock, and they are like locking down in their little rocking chairs. And this section is one of my favorites because it's where we honor the importance of a multi-generational movement. You have like these youngins learning and doing things that the people before them could not do, and then we have our elders who teach us where we are and help, we stand on their shoulders. And so this kind of gives me context of like how long of a struggle this is, we've had colonial capitalism on this land for hundreds of years, and we have a long way to go, and this is a many generational long process. So that's just like one of my favorite parts.
And we kind of came up with these 5 different categories that they all kind of fit into. So we decided to kind of clump certain situations together, and then we overlaid that with a piece of tracing paper and sketched all of these individual things that we had drawn on different pieces of paper. We drew them on one piece of paper in pencil. Then we actually went back to all the people that we had interviewed in order to make this, and we asked them if it made sense to them, if it was accurately representing their story, and if there was anything we needed to change. And there were a couple things that we needed to change, and we did. So then we did that, and then we had a couple of dinky little light tables, and we
Mine's not dinky.
Oh my God.
Both of ours are really dinky.
we propped them up with like wooden blocks, and we drew the final one, tracing it to these light boxes.
Yeah, it was pretty big.
So there is a singular completed piece.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Somewhere.
it's
That's
at my
taped
house.
together? Oh, wait.
No, it's a single piece of paper, right?
It's literally taped together.
It's kind of like you created it as a jigsaw puzzle,
Yeah.
Definitely.
which might be a good fundraiser, make that a jigsaw puzzle.
We have a lesson.
Wow. Great
We have a
detail.
version of this that when we're teaching younger students, and we cut it up into pieces, and they kind of like get a
Oh.
piece and
Yeah.
they put it together.
Nice.
What's the website?
It is thewaterways.org.
Okay.
And on that, you can find all of the information about this, all the different kinds of events that we run. We also have a page of resources, which might have an organization that you're a part of on it. And then it has like a way of contacting us. Our prices, our shop, anything you need.
So there's kind of 2 reasons I'm here right now. One is, like I said, being one of the people that was interviewed for this whole thing, one of these many characters that's part of this story. And another is specifically because of the Mariner East pipeline and the connection between where I live and here that is made by that pipeline. And like the relationships that have been made out of that. I keep trying to look at it now, I'm like, I can't look at it anymore. So I thought it was really interesting that Bree was saying about this upper corner being about kind of her home, because I feel the same way. Art is open to interpretation. So yeah, so like that's where I kind of feel like I've come from, like central Pennsylvania, rural community. I grew up on, a multi-acre plot of land that was, and still is mostly wooded. It's the forest, really. We basically live in the woods, and we kind of share that home with a lot of critters, and little waterways.
So I did make that spotted salamander because of your home.
Yeah, we had a spotted salamander in our pond, I think right around that time when I met Meg and Bree. So yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like that's where I come from too. We're definitely at the beginning of the watershed that we live in, which is the Juniata watershed, which is part of the Susquehanna watershed. So, but I mean, the property where I live, where my family has lived for like 35 years, we have those little springs and the little streams that start flowing into, like the ones that are on the property don't have names, they're that small. They're like, this wide and this deep. So, yeah, I mean, that part really speaks to me. But we were kind of just found ourselves just kind of doing our thing, like these beavers here, and, you know, those frogs were just kind of, you know, living life and all that. And then, the Mariner East pipeline came along and really just kind of disrupted all that and threw it for a loop. And at that time, we decided, mostly me and my mother, Ellen, decided that we were going to try and stop them, try and slow them down, try and resist the destruction that was brought by that pipeline. So, and then with that, I mean, given where we live, in the woods, there was a lot of, you know, thoughts about the ecosystem and the waterways and everything that went in with that. So we decided to do that, and to do that, what we had to do first was start reaching out to all these other people, kind of represented down here, and up there, of people who had already been taking on the fight against fracking for probably a decade before we ever did. You know, we kind of came late to the game in 2015. So, we started talking with folks, reaching out, forming relationships with people, and, you know, learning about what we were getting ourselves into. I went to a DEP meeting in Harrisburg, and I was handing out these little flyers like, resist the pipeline, like, let's do direct action against the pipeline. And I wound up handing them one of those flyers to someone who had like been doing direct action against fracking for like a number of years, you know, in Pennsylvania. So I just, you know, we weren't the first. And so we just kind of had to like figure out what had already been done, what like, what kind of movement had already been built, and like where we fit into it. So we did that, and we wound up, you know, going to all the meetings, doing like the petitions and trying to talk sense to the government, which, you know, didn't really work. They already had their minds made up about it. Wolf's been a, you know, proponent of the pipeline for many years. So this is just one thing I was thinking about the representation of Wolf in this mural. I don't know if I brought this up before, but like, I get that he's like a wolf and everything, but I don't see him like that, you know? I don't see him as like somebody who's like intimidating or, you know, I see him as a coward personally, you know, like, so, do what?
He's clamming hands.
Right, you know, so, but, so I was just thinking that earlier when y'all were talking, but, you know, cause he's just gone along with what the industry wants, you know, he's just been their crony, he's, you know, given them everything they want, all the permits that they want, all the tax subsidies that they want, you know, for the Mariner East pipeline, for other fracking projects, for, you know, the petrochemical industry that is like the next phase of what's coming out of fracking in this region, like with the Shell ethane cracker up in Beaver County. That's actually where my mom is from. She's from the town where they're building that ethane cracker in Beaver County. So we got a lot of concerns about that too. But anyway, with the Mariner East, we just decided to take it on, and like I think I kind of knew what we were getting into, and I tried to, you know, learn everything I could about what I was getting into before we did it. We knew that we were a small family. My mom is a retired teacher. I work in social services, and the two of us decided we were going to take on a $50 billion corporation in like the state of Pennsylvania. So we just decided to do that. But all these people like came to our aid too when we kind of put out that call. You know, we kind of like that's what I think of like what this music is here, like kind of, well, that's part of it. There's a lot of different aspects to that, but yeah, part of it was that we kind of put out a call. We said we're gonna do this. I sat in a tree for a while when they first tried to come and log for the project. My mom went to jail, a couple of my other friends went to jail. And we stopped them from clearing the entire right of way. They cleared, you know, some of it, but some of it they didn't, because me and a few other folks were up in the trees getting in the way. And then we had a lot of support on the ground and people putting media out about it. You know, that was like a huge aspect of it. And then out of that too came a lot of art and, you know, things like this to help amplify the story and tell the story and tell it in different ways where, you know, it could get in touch with other people. So there was just a lot over a period of a couple of years that went into that organizing and that resistance. And then also part of that is this kind of stuff with the, you know, this kind of creature here with the cameras, and holding like a gun. We did kind of find ourselves up against that kind of stuff, like this straight up kind of thuggery from the company, from the police, but also them coming at us in different ways with like a lot of surveillance, and trying to like get into our heads and try to like kind of get into our psychology and break us down and make us stop doing what we were doing. But we just kind of got through it with everybody, you know, like it wasn't just, you know, me and my mom, it was everybody that came through to help us, everybody that like, you know, made a poster, came out to a rally, raised some funds, told our story, all of it, you know, and it was a thing, it was something.
Definitely something. No doubt.
It was just kind of like our part that like we tried to do with like what we had, and then, you know, everyone else that was like inspired to join with us either there where we were or somewhere else where they were. You know, that was another really important thing that we always tried to get across when we were, you know, doing direct action, is that like, you know, you don't have to come here, and we don't need everybody to like come to Camp White Pine. We just need you to stand up where you are and do what you can and work with your community to fight these projects in your home, because they're happening everywhere. And another huge part that was going on when we were doing this was what was happening at Standing Rock. So that influenced us a lot. We made a lot of relationships with people through that struggle. And it was really like they were kind of going on simultaneously. It was like the days that I was up in the tree first were like, it was like 2 days before the first TP went up at Standing Rock. So it was just like, it was quite a couple years for a lot of people. But I think that there's a lot of positive things that came out of it. Like, yes, like there's a lot of pipelines that got built in the meantime, but I think that at least in Pennsylvania, that the government and the industry is nowhere near where they thought they would be by 2019, when they started kind of going in on this plan of building all these new transmission lines through Pennsylvania. It's supposed to be something like, well, with the gathering lines and transmission lines, 30,000 pipelines over the course of 10 years between 2015 and 2025. And I mean, from what I'm seeing, that's not, you know, that's not really happening. And like with Mariner East, it's taken them much longer than they ever thought it was gonna take them. And some of that is their own fault, because they didn't know what they were getting into when they came here. but, some of it is the people fighting back and the land even fighting back itself. Like all these things, like with the, oh my gosh, I know the word for it, like the inadvertent returns and everything. Like, it always makes me think that, like, in a way, like the earth is like fighting back. Like every time they like break a drill bit or whatever, or like, I know that they were having problems, like where I live, like right under, the land where I live, like, they were having a hard time drilling through those mountains. You know, like they didn't know, they didn't know what they were getting into, and like, it's like the earth didn't wanna be drilled, you know? And so, I saw that happening too.
Did they lose a drill bit under the lake?
Yeah, I live by Racetown Lake, and they had a ton of issues over there. So, yeah, that's kind of where things are at right now. I think most people know kind of where Mariner East is, you know, where the process is right now, which is still ongoing and clearly well beyond their first initial deadlines of like, what, November 2016 or something? So, yeah, I don't know, we just, that's our part in this, and then what's next is, I don't know. You know, but I think that we're gonna keep going at it. Mariner East kinda came directly to us, but it's like, once that kind of thing comes to you, it doesn't leave you, so, we're gonna just keep trying to do what we do and mind our own business and mind their business.